All right, welcome to Lab 3B. In this one, we're going to make a hat and an iron, the Monopoly pieces. So we've already done the hardest one. I mean, this ship has a lot more detail than these two. So in this one, mainly the iron, I'm going to talk about a different technique we can use, which is using spleens. And we're going to use a spleen to make kind of this shape up here. And the hat, I'm going to get you started, and then I want you to do the hat on your own. You should by now have enough tools in your 3D building belt to make this yourself, but I will help you get started with it. Right, so let's get 3ds Max open. And to start, let's just look at our reference. So I'm going to open this iron up here and just have a look at it. So you can see it's kind of pretty simple. There's not too much going on here. If you feel like you can go ahead and do it yourself, on you go. The hardest bit is going to be this shape up here. And we can do something, we can use something called spleens. And spleens basically kind of lets us draw a line, and then we can tick a button and it'll basically build the mesh around that line. And the base, you can see, is going to be super easy. We're just going to start with a rectangle and scale in the end just to make it a bit pointed. All right, so let's open up 3ds Max and get started. To start, I'm going to build that base. So I'm going to get a box, kind of drag it out into the workspace. Just going to give it some height. Right, I'm going to press W and center it like we always do. Okay, so we've got a centered box. Now let's look at our units here. So it's sitting at about 1 meter by 1 meter with 10 centimeters height. Our last one, we didn't actually, we started off with the dimensions of the image. We didn't really make it the proper length and width it should be, which we'll sort out later when we put them all together in one scene. But for this one, let's say 0.3 by, I don't know, 0.3 by 0.01. See where that gets us. All right. Now I'm going to get rid of that grid just by pressing G, just so I can focus on what I'm working with here. And I'm going to get the rough kind of shape initially. So I'll look at my reference again. So last week we had a reference image in the viewport. I'm not actually going to do that this week, just because it's not too complicated. We're going to do what we call eyeballing. And eyeballing is just, it means we're just looking at one image and then kind of guessing how it should look. It's not like we're building something super accurate for 3D printing or anything. We're just getting something that visually looks close enough to our reference image. So I'm going to look here and eyeball these kind of dimensions, just so it ends up looking close enough. So I'm going to make sure I'm looking at the front. So this is the front this way. And I'm just going to take the width in a bit. Something about that. Maybe the height a little bit higher. Don't worry about getting these values exact. Like I say every time, we're just eyeballing here. Just get yours so it looks about right. And yeah, maybe a little bit longer for me. And I think that'll do. Of course, let's name it. Let's call this iron base. And I'm going to give it that kind of color that works with the reference image. Okay, now we're going to need to take in the top to get this kind of point. Firstly, we're going to need to give it more polygons to work with, because, just watch this for a sec, if I just took an edit poly in right now, took these, scaled it in, I've just got like an arrow. I don't want that. So I'm going to need to give it more polygons to work with. So I'll get rid of that edit poly. Going to look at our box, and let's go for length segments. I think it'll be, yep. And I'm going to go, right, at what point, I'm going to look at what point it starts tapering in. And it actually starts tapering very early, I think. So it starts coming in kind of all the way back here. So I need to make sure that I've got this kind of structure here, so I could take in these points all the way to a kind of sharp point there. So I think that'll work. I'm going to have 6 length segments. I'm going to go to edit poly. And I'm going to use a tool called soft selection. This is going to be good to let you know how soft selection works. So in our edit poly down here, we've got soft selection, and I'm going to tick use soft selection. Now, with my vertices selected, if I select the top ones here, you can see we get this rainbow kind of color outwards. And what this is doing is it's telling us how much what we do to one is going to affect the others. So red being the strongest effect, blue being the weakest effect, with staying white having no effect. And you'll see what will happen is we kind of get these shapes. Well, I've only got these two selected and it's affecting the others. So I'm just going to undo that. And what we're going to need to do here is kind of change this shape so that it will kind of match what we're looking for. So I'm just going to play with these values for a second. So here's my effect. I want it to go to about there. Okay, so for this, I'm going to need it to be, I need it to pinch, and I don't want it to bubble. I think something like that. I might need to just get the fall off a bit better. Yeah, there we go. So that pinch there for me is about 1 with a 0 bubble. And you can see how that kind of works. If I go out the way, you see how it works that way. And if I come in, you see how it works that way. So I'm just going to set it to about there. Okay, and you can see there, we have now got that shape. Looking at the reference image, yeah, I'm happy with that. We'll not go high poly yet. Let's just leave it there, and we'll get a whole low poly object before we convert this to high poly. But we can at least rename this edit poly to low poly for just now. Okay, now the spleen. Over in our create, we've got the normal circle down here, which is standard primitives. Then if we actually move over to this circle and the square, we get our spleens. And we're going to use a line. Now, you can't really use these in the perspective viewport. It's really hard to draw and know what's going on in the perspective viewport. So we're going to use our... So this is our left viewport down back here, which means this is the back and this is the front. In my head, it's just going to make a little more sense looking at our reference image. I want this side to be the back and this side to be the front. So I'm just going to switch it to make it our right viewport. Like that. So you can click those little arrows on the square and it'll just kind of flip it around. So I'll do it till it says right. Now I know, like this one, the right here, this is the back and this is the front. So I'm going to click on this now right viewport down here with my middle click, which focuses it. And I'm going to press Alt-W to make it bigger, just so I can kind of pay attention a bit more. Right, now I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to kind of try and make this shape. So maybe play around with this spleen a few times. Just start clicking, and then click and hold to make a bend, and just kind of get a feel for how it works first. When you click, it places a point down. When you click and hold, it lets you make a bend. When you let go, it will let you continue the bend. So just kind of play with that for a bit, just to get a feel for how it works. I don't know, try draw something. Just quickly take a moment there to try and feel how this works. Then when you're ready, we'll make our one. And I'm going to start that now. So it kind of goes a bit high. What you could do, like if you really want to get things accurate, you can kind of take a measurement there of that height and then see how many of those it goes up. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep eyeballing. So I'll start at the back. I'm going to click there. Move it up to about here. I'm going to start the bend here. So I'm going to click and hold. And then I'm going to put it to about there. Then let go so I can continue it. And I'm going to stop the bend there on my one. Now I can hold shift and it'll make a straight line. I haven't clicked yet. Now I click, so I can start a new bend. I'm going to put the bend point about there, so click and hold. And then finish the bend, and I can go all the way back down to here. Well, maybe I'll finish the bend there, then a straight line to about there. And then once I'm done, it wants me to place another one, but if I right click, it finishes it. So it's not to worry, I can move this around after this to get the shape if it's not 100% right. So The main thing is I want to make sure that that top part is straight. So when you do that top part, when you've made a point here, hold shift so it makes a straight line, and then a point here. We need that top part to be straight. That's important. Now I can go over to my modify tab of this line we've selected. And let's call this line iron handle. Okay. Now over here in rendering, let's just get out of this side view. So I'm just going to middle click on it to select it, then press Alt W to get out. Now I've got my perspective back up here. Okay. Now over here, rendering, we've got enable and renderer and enable and viewport. Let's click both of them on, and you'll see it's now made a mesh using that line we've got. So we've got a few options here. We can change the thickness like that. So this is good for kind of making pipeworks and things like that. Our sides just kind of increases the detail. We'll keep it about 12. And our angle just kind of rotates around where the lines are, which we don't really need to think about at the moment, so we'll just keep it 0. Okay, now let's look back at my reference, make sure our shape's good. My one's not too bad, but if you need to move it, we can select vertex here, and then what you can do, if you're looking down at this viewport again, you can just see where the vertex is. See that there? That's the vertex. It's where we had the lines placed. So if you wanted to just see the line again, you could untick enable and viewport. Then you can see just this line again. But I'm going to keep it on. And then I can highlight and select this vertex down here, press W, and you can see you can move it. So that's pretty handy. You can see all the kind of things you can do and move around. If you need to remove a point, what you can actually do is you can do that. It is over here. We have refine. Now, if you click refine, it lets you add another vertex just by clicking on places. If you need to delete one, you can just highlight it, press delete. Again, if you need to add one, it's refine down over here, and that lets you add points. If you needed to change one, you can highlight it, change it as in this one's a point, but if you need it to be a Bezier, you can highlight them and change it over here. See, we've got Bezier, corner, smooth. That lets you change the type. So if you wanted this to be, see how this one's a sharp line right now, but if I wanted that to be a smooth Bezier, I can highlight it, right click over here. I can change it to Bezier corner, which will give me handles. I can right click it, change it to Bezier, which will be two handles stuck together. And then I could just change it back to a corner. So you kind of have effects like that, tools like that. It works kind of similar to how Photoshop does splines. So I'm going to highlight it, press delete, get rid of that one because I don't want it. Actually, I'm just going to undo back to where I was. That was just me kind of showing off how they work. Okay. But this is the kind of best way to do it. The shape, one here, there, a few there, like that. I could even, to be honest, get a line here just to make it a bit better. Actually, let's do that. So my one, I'm going to hit refine. I'm going to put one there. Untick refine over here. Then this one, I'll need to change this one to a corner, which makes a straight line between those two. So play around with yours, try get this kind of shape as close as you can. As I say, remember the main important thing here is I want this line to be straight, and you'll see the reason why soon. Alright, so let's change enable and viewport, put that back on. Now, I'll just make it the same color. Make sure that I've got it about the right thickness, so maybe just a tiny bit thicker. Maybe about there. Okay, now let's add this kind of wider bit on the handle. So to do this, now that I've got this, I've got the line here, I'm going to add an edit poly on top. Same kind of way we usually do. And now I'm going to select polygon, highlight these ones, which should be straight, and I'm going to extrude. Bring up the settings over here and edit polygons. I've got extrude and a little box next to it. I'm going to keep it group normals, that's good. And I'm going to, whoa, I don't want group normals. I'm going to change it by local normals. There we go. And you can see we can just kind of make it the right kind of size. Oh, maybe about there for me. And I'm going to look back at the reference. And now I'm kind of looking at it. Maybe it needs to be a bit thinner and a bit back. So here, I'm going to just scale with the R tool. I've still got these polygons selected. And then on the ZX axis, I'm just going to scale it back in a bit. Now, the good thing about this, because our modifiers are stacked, that whatever I do down here is not going to change the amount of polygons up there unless I increase the sides, which I'm not going to do. That means I can just hit yes there when that comes up. And I can select this, hit vertex, whoop, hit vertex again on the selection. And if I hit here, so you see how it took away where that handle was, and I can't see it anymore. If I hit this button here, that'll show what's happening at the top of this stack. But with these vertexes here, I can actually highlight here because I know they're there, and move that back, and you can see that it's still showing the effect of what the edit poly would do on top, which is handy. I'm gonna move them a little bit back, and then maybe this one a little bit back for me, just because, or let's see what this would do as well. Yeah, okay, I kind of can't tell what's going on now, so I'm just going to turn that off. And for me, I want to take these ones in a little bit. So just play, make it work for how you like it. So it kind of disappeared there, but in fact, yeah, it's completely disappeared. How did that happen? Okay, so sometimes weird things like that can happen, but still over here I've got my hierarchy, so I can select iron handle. I'm not too sure what happened there. I think it's because I unticked, let's have a look. If I go back in here, yeah, I don't have enable and viewport, so it just kind of disappeared, and the edit poly was trying to work on nothing. So if I just click that back, I'll get it back, enable and viewport. But as I say, see how it disappeared there and I couldn't select anything. Over here in our hierarchy, we can select anything back. All right, and I'm just going to pull back into line and vertex. I'm just going to pull these two vertexes down a bit just so that it kind of buries itself in the base. Okay, I'm happy enough with that. I don't really like the bend there, but we're not going for gold here. Let's just look at it, see if I can do anything about it. Vertex select. Just playing, making it look a bit better. It should probably be in about the middle. For me, maybe that's better. It's close enough. Okay, now I might want to make that a little bit thicker. I can actually still go back down into box and add more height for me. And yeah, that will work as a low poly. Of course, let's make sure our hierarchy is right. I might have poly there. I'm just unticking selection. Okay. And hierarchy down to there. Cool. That is now a low poly iron piece at least. Let's make it high poly now. So to do that, we can, this one, we will add a turbo smooth because I do want that bit to be a bit smoother. Alright, on this bottom one I'm going to use the chamfer technique. So will I? Yeah, let's try it. So I'm going to add in a poly on top. Rename this one to chamfer. Oops. To chamfer. and select edges. And on this one, I'm going to select the edges I want to chamfer, which are just going to be kind of all these outer edges. Well, the top and bottom ones. So I'm holding Control and double clicking just to kind of select them. And I'll need these two here as well. But the front two, I'm going to leave and see how that kind of smooths out. Okay, so I've selected all the top ones there, all the bottom ones, make sure you get them right. That's actually poking out underneath, I'll fix that in a sec. And these two here at the back. So, now let's add a chamfer on the modifier. That's far too much for me at the moment, so I'm going to bring down the amount. Maybe to about there, add a bit more segments. Tension, probably about 0.5. Okay, now I've added Turbo Smooth on top. Increase the iterations. Let's have a look. That looks pretty good. As I said, this was poking out a little bit here. So if I go back down to this line, hit yes, that's fine. Select the vertex. Highlight here because I know there's one little vertex here for the line. And just raise it up a bit, just so it's buried in there. Alright, now let's do the same for up here. So if I added a Turbo Smooth right now, it would not work. Just kind of, you see it kind of does this. It's just because those lines had no structure and these ones didn't have any structure. So I'm going to turn that off, go to Edit Poly. Let's just do the Swift loop for this one. So remember, if I hit Edge, over here, Modeling, Edit, there's Swift loop. Now what I can do, if I press F4 so I can see what's going on with the edges. You see when I hover over, we get that ring. So let's reinforce that one about there. Reinforce. Whoop. Go zoom in so I can see. Reinforce that one. If I look in, I'm going to need to reinforce here too. And look at this back to this one. I need to reinforce there. And down here, I'll need to reinforce the edge at the end. So somewhere about there. So I'm just kind of highlighting over and following it down. And then about there. So to unselect Swift Loop, back over here and Edit. It's there, still highlighted. Click it, unticks it. Now if I turn the Turbo Smooth on, you can see we're good. Maybe the Turbo Smooth, yeah, 2 iterations. Looks good. I'm not 100% happy with those bits. I could spend more time with the spleen to kind of not get, you can see my one's a little bit bumpy there, but it will do for just now. It's all good. And there we go, we got our iron, our little iron piece, which will do for just now. Excellent. Okay, in the same scene, I'm just going to start you off on how to make the hat. So I'm just going to highlight these, and I can right click, hide selection. I'll just make them invisible for the moment. So let's look over at this reference. So how are we going to do this? Well, look at this top shape here. It's mostly a cylinder, but it's a bit like an elongated cylinder, kind of like how the turret was last time. If I'm doing this, I would probably start at this base here and kind of do a similar shape like that. So I'm just going to quickly, remember I want you to do this on your own, so I'm just going to very quickly show you, without talking too much, how I would do it. So I get an initial shape like this, take down the length segments because I don't need them. I would be looking at the top, thinking about what I've kind of got to work with here. That looks fine for me, 18. Then I'd be adding the Edit Poly on. Looking at it. Making sure I'm looking at the front. And I make that elongation with my Edit Poly if I was doing it, like this. Maybe not like that. How would I do it? Well, I'd highlight these top ones, pull it out a bit, highlight these bottom ones, pull them out a bit to get that kind of shape, which kind of looks cool. Then I would be deleting this one and this one, going to my edges and doing the technique we did for most of the battleship piece, holding shift. And you can see already how this isn't going to be too hard. Taking them in, maybe it's about there, capping it. Then here, I would finish off the model like how an actual hat would work. Going to there, up here, just inverting the kind of the same. So you can see this one shouldn't be any trouble. There's no techniques here that we haven't gone over already. So I'd like you to do this one mostly on your own without kind of a step-by-step that we've had before. Remember, just looking at this reference, the sides go up a bit. So, like, it's pretty simple. And maybe, of course, it looks like there's a ring there. So I could have done that whilst I was making it. Moved it up to about there, then scaled it in and kept going up. But if I didn't do that, then I could add a swift loop. Two swift loops, because I would need to move it out a bit from my one. Edit, get rid of that. One anti-selection technique, if I double click this one and then control click polygon, it will select the polygons that were around it, around the edge. I don't want these ones though, so I can hold Alt and click them off, and then I have that, and I could have taken that out a bit. Like that. And you see I've already got a low poly one now. Control A, auto smooth. There we go. So I've already got a low poly one there. To make it high poly, you should know that as well. Again, I'm just going to very quickly do it, just so you can have a reference, just to remember the processes, but I'm not doing a step-by-step here, just so you can practice these on your own. I would call that one low poly, that one high poly, but I'm not going to, so I'm just going to do it quickly. But you'd see, if I did the turbo smooth now, it doesn't work, so I need to reinforce the edges. Which edges would I reinforce? It would be probably the length ones. There. Use the chamfer technique, just because it mostly works most of the time. Keep them pretty tight. Segments 2, tension about 0.5. Then if I did turbo smooth and bumped it up a bit, you can see I've pretty much already made that. Not hard at all. And I might play around with the low poly down here. I can click show cage, which will show me where the polygons are of the lower one. And you can see I could maybe play around and make the shape just a bit better. But you can see it's pretty quick and easy. Now you should have the techniques to make this. If you don't, put your hand up, get me over, I'll come help.